Welcome, everyone. I like the energy in the room. Always nice to see a full house. Welcome. Before we start the meeting, I want to report out the governing board met in closed session from 6:03 to 7:03 and took the following action. Under personnel matters, the governing board voted 5-0 to release one probationary, one administrative employee for the 2014-2015 school year, equating to a full-time equivalent of one. Okay, put that aside. All right. As is our norm, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. There we go. Zach Troutman, come on down. Hi, Zach. How are you? Welcome.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Zach. All right. We have comments from the public related to items not on this agenda, which is item 9, and just that one? All right. So, Nadia.
No, but that is on the agenda, so we have.
Oh, there is nothing. Okay.
We're at item 7.
I'm sorry?
We're at item 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead. You're right. Adoption of agenda as presented and amended. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Sure. Motion to adopt?
I'll
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Student, staff, and community recognition. Elizabeth, I think a lot of people are here for this event in particular. See a lot of familiar faces. Welcome.
They are, President Papalardo, and you mentioned the energy in the room is quite tenable, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce the principal of Cunha Intermediate School, who's going to tell you about even more exciting things that have been happening at our intermediate school. Lalo Lopez.
You feel the energy?
We feel it. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Schock, members of the board, Board President Papalardo. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize Cunha students, staff, and parents. We're here to celebrate a Cunha tradition, the 8th grade science fair. I'm happy to report that this year, 100% of 8th graders submitted a project, thanks to the effort of the science department led by Ms. Hitchner, who's here with us tonight. To put it in perspective, 266 students participated, 24 made it to the county fair, and 3 made it to state. So here is, I'm gonna ask Ms. Hitchner to introduce the 3 students who were forwarded to the state level from the county. So Ms. Hitchner, if you do me the honors, please.
I should add, this is a really long-standing tradition. If you grew up in Half Moon Bay, you've got to do science fair. And this is a big deal. These students worked on this project for 3+ months. They were finalists at our fair, which had 40 judges, and they went on to the county fair. They were there for 4 nights. They all got interviewed. So it's a big commitment. We're extremely proud of them, and we're really excited they're going to LA to support us. So the first one is John Howell. Second one is Andrew Pantera. Amy here. We'll keep this for her. She's on a wonderful project as well.
Hey, Lala.
Thank you.
Hey,
Yes.
John.
Question, John, they're gonna,
Yeah, John, keep
You're
wearing
gonna have to pass a
that
test here.
sweatshirt. I like that as a Cal Poly alumni. Keep Keep doing good things.
So let's give a hand again. Thank you so much for coming. And especially to the parents as well, because they have been a integral support to the students doing their projects. So the next group. So CUNYA's stated vision is to inspire all students to reach high academic expectations, think critically and creatively, especially that, think creatively. Members of the Odyssey of the Mind, a CUNYA club, embody our vision. To elaborate their accomplishment and what they have done this year, I present to you the advisors of the club, CUNYA counselor Catherine Weber, and parent Rick Southern, to speak a bit about their accomplishment, and then we're going to recognize the students.
He's also one of our parent advisors. Odyssey of the Mind is an international educational program that teaches creative problem-solving skills. The students involved are the following. Casey Coe. Come on up. Stu Yeager. Got a second place in their division in the regionals, and then Mr. Southern, tell them what happened after that.
Well, this started out as a GATE program at Hatch, and there's 3 of the original kids, and there's 2 new kids this year. I've been coaching for about 4 years. Greg coached this year, and my goal was always to take 3rd place because you get a medal, but you don't have to go any further. This year, they took 2nd at the regionals, so they got their medals, and it meant they were invited to state. And I didn't stick around for the meeting because I thought they were just done, but they really wanted to go to state. So we went to the state. It's a big deal. It's like being in Hollywood. I mean, these are the brightest, most creative kids that you've ever seen. And they design their own sets. They're all painted. They design and tailor their own costumes. They write scripts. They write songs. They do an 8-minute production that is just totally polished, is beautiful, and it's every bit themselves. There's nothing that comes from any parent suggestions. And they tied for 4th out of 14 teams in the state competition, which is just unimaginable to me. So that was my dream come true. If they finished 2nd, they would have gone to Worlds. We didn't have to do that.
Thank you so much. And the last group. So at CUNYA, we believe that all students have the cognitive capacity, ability to learn. And we believe that it's our job to make sure that it happens. However, it's easier said than done, especially for the classroom teachers in the room. One of the metrics that we use to measure student achievement is grade point average. I'm happy to report that for Q1 of this academic year, 441 students, or 60% of earn a 3-point GPA or higher. So if we were at the high school level, that will make them eligible for a CSU or even a UC system. On the other hand, 77 or 11% of our students earn a 2.0 GPA or lower. I am here to recognize a group of extraordinary individuals who decided to do the ordinary things to make sure that the 11% have a chance to succeed. To provide support to the 11%, we developed a partnership with the San Mateo County, this is a long name, Behavioral Health and Recovery Service Office of Equity to offer a 4-hour night class for our parents and students. It happens on Thursdays from 5:30 to 9:30. The goal of the program is to enhance parenting skills and provide the necessary tools for parents to create a rich learning environment at home. The people that make this possible, these are extraordinary individuals, like I said, who do ordinary things. And these are the people that I'm going to call up here and recognize. Our community liaison, Ms. Silvia Valle. she made a lot of calls to survey our parents to figure out which day would work for them. And so she's amazing what she does. Silvestra Costa, our custodian. I hope Ms. Silvestra is here. He's working, but he had to rearrange his schedule to make sure that he helps us with taking care of our facilities. Then also from Boys and Girls Club, the executive director, Ms. Guerrero, Judith Guerrero. Half Moon Bay Library Community Outreach, Mara Cota. And the Behavioral Health and Recovery Service Office of Equity Representative, Yolanda Novello. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh. Board President, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody. Great work. All right, that completes the recognition component. Excellent. We don't have any comments, as we identified before, from the public related to items not on the agenda. So we'll go to number 10, representative reports. Tom, do we have a representative from COTA today? Does not look like it. Okay. And anybody from CSEA tonight? All right, we'll have no representative reports. So we'll move to number 11A. We're going to receive an update related to the County of San Mateo's efforts to improve coastside trails. Supervisor Horsley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, President Papalardo and members of the board as well as the staff. I'm going to give you a quick thumbnail sketch on projects that we are working on. They all take a lot of time. There's a lot of planning that has to be done, a lot of public outreach. I also want to, I think you all know Nicholas from my staff. He does such a fabulous job. We call him the governor. For no small reason. He just he seems to know everybody, does everything. He does a great job for the whole coast side and for me as well. So the first, the safe routes to school in El Granada. I'll just get a quick report on that. Last year, your board supported the county's application to the San Mateo County Transportation Authority for funding, and we actually did get funding for about $500,000 to conduct planning, permitting, and design. And we do know from the surveys that you've done at El Granada Elementary School, the walk and bike audit, only about 50% of the reason why parents won't let their children walk or bike to school really are associated with the lack of a safe route.
Supervisor Horsley, just a moment. Just there's a fair amount of noise in the back, and as a courtesy to our speaker, if we could please keep that down, or if we need to close the door, I'm not sure which, but thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Well, that's no problem. In any case, we'll be working with both obviously your board as well as the El Granada Elementary School, the parent-teacher organization, and make sure that that trail is designed to make sure that it's safe for everybody, especially students. We'll come back and have another report on that. Surfers Beach, that's been I know that's a concern of at least one of the board members. And give you a quick rundown of what, what happened to us, it came to us that the road gets eroded, or actually the bluff gets eroded about 1.5 feet per year, and it would look like the trail only has about 1.8 feet before it starts undermining the road. So we immediately contacted Caltrans and the Coastal Commission. We asked for an emergency permit, which of course they slam dunked us and said no. But we started a process of working with the Coastal Commission, with the City of Half Moon Bay, with Caltrans. It took us about 8 months, and we pretty much, we now have got a plan that we're working both with the city, as I said, the city, the county, Caltrans, and the Coastal Commission. We, that is the city and county, will pay for all the planning and design. And then we got the state to agree that they will actually pay for the actual fix. And the actual fix is going to be revetment. Anybody know what a revetment is? I didn't know what it was either. It's essentially sheet piling, steel sheet piling, and it's anchored with some riprap. Not a lot, but some. And the other part of it is that there'll also be stairways down onto the beach. And the other thing that it'll do is it'll widen the existing path so that it'll be, again, a multimodal trail that goes right alongside on the west side of Highway 1. So we're hoping that we'll be able to get that actually done probably by next year. We've also instituted a congestion management plan. We actually obtained a grant for about $1.5 million from the Transportation Authority. And what that $1.5 million allows us to do is to conduct planning, permitting, design of a series of congestion management projects throughout the Mid-Coast along Highway 1 corridor. Projects will really conceptualize through a community developed. I don't know, some of you may have participated. It was the Highway 1 mobility study, both 1 and 2, over the last couple, well, actually probably was done about 3 years ago. But we actually are using that mobility study, and we identified some projects. There are essentially 10 pedestrian crossings, 3 series of raised medians, and then some left turn lanes. The reason for the medians is that if you're going to cross that highway, instead of having to go across a couple of lanes, if you have a median in the center, at least you can go across one lane at a time. It makes it a lot safer. But we also are looking for some crosswalks in specific locations. That crosswalk in and of itself isn't necessarily safe. The drivers, if they're going along at 45 miles an hour, just because there's a painted crosswalk doesn't mean that they're going to slow down and stop. So we're looking at potentially other kinds of devices. People don't like to hear about traffic signals, but that may be the ultimate answer in some areas, not everywhere, but some areas. And in any case, that we're going to continue working on that. We'll pretty soon we'll start a public process, roll out all of our plans, get public input, do the final design, and then after that we will then have to start seeking other grants for actual construction money. But at least that's the process of planning and permitting and public outreach is it is expensive, but it has to be done. We want to make sure that we do it right, and we want to make sure that it's something that the community supports. There's a parallel trail in Montara and Moss Beach. We are now applying for, that is actually maybe the final project. We're applying for a grant of about $1 million. It's Caltrans Active Transportation Program, again, to plan, permit, and design a safe route to school and commuter trail in Montara and Moss Beach. So I really want your support on that project. And actually would like a letter from the school board. We do want to, really this would be a safe routes to Fairlawn View School. And if you ask me the specific, it actually we use some of the existing streets, Main Street, Carlo Street, it goes from 2nd always to 12th. We'll have to, there's a lot of challenges in this particular path, but in any case, again, I think it'll do 2 things. It'll be a multimodal trail for other people, and it'll also be a safe routes to school. So we think that we have a fairly good chance of getting that grant, and we'd certainly like your support. And that concludes my remarks about what we are working on the coast side. Be glad to answer any questions.
I do have a question. In regards to the area on Highway 1 near Sam's Chatterhouse, I live above in El Granada, and
yeah,
a weekend or 2 does not go by when I don't hear ambulances. I guess folks that pull out after a libation or 2, and I'm concerned if there's anything, I see some widening, but just wondering if there's anything to deal with that congestion there and the potential for accidents. Anything to discuss there?
What they're doing is they're putting in a left turn lane, and I'm not sure if they're going to also have a pocket lane. We haven't really, I'm not really aware of a whole lot of accidents, so I'll have to take a look. I can get back and let you know, and we can do some analysis of the statistics, but what they really need there probably is some additional parking, because even if you have a left turn lane and you're left turning into what? There really is inadequate parking in that area, and people obviously are parking along on the east side of the highway, which is extremely dangerous. I don't really see that we'd be able to put any kind of a traffic light there, but hopefully this, this left turn lane will help to some extent.
I heard conversation at some point about an overpass or something, going from one side to the other, walkway of some kind.
Well, the problem with overpasses is it has to be ADA compliant. You need a lot of land. And you also, you have view corridors that they end up blocking views, so they're really very controversial. You can't even going underneath the road is not a great idea either, because they become areas where, from a law enforcement point of view, they are problematic. So that it's pretty tough to have. You just need an awful lot of land, and you've got to have. It's got to be ADA compliant, so you almost have to have an elevator to get some people up there who are handicapped. So they don't really work very well.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming, safe paths. You may, of course,
Excuse me. Don, thank you for your leadership in this, and both, especially the Surfers Beach area, which I'm glad that Caltrans realizes there is a problem, and they look like they're going to want to fix it, and we'll get some real benefit out of that as far as people being able to use the trails along there and safely walk along it. Regarding the schools, in your plan, and this is probably the way it's proposed, but could you confirm that you do intend to make sure the route as you leave Fairlawn heading out to as far out as you can go will be safe, so that kids are not following a pathway that then ends, leaving a gap between the end of the pathway and the school, wherever that might be, because the sidewalks or lack of sidewalks in the area are an issue. So that is your intent.
It is the intent, and there is one area that is pretty. It actually comes out off of Main Street, and I'm not sure of the cross street, and there is a little area that I am concerned about, and we actually have proposed putting metal barriers, much like you see in a freeway, so that there's a barrier between that path and traffic. We think that's a pretty good solution. That we don't think that we don't want to put a trail that doesn't have any kind of a barrier, because there's no place for the kids to go. In fact, actually, there's a ravine that's to the east of it, so they're not going to jump into the ravine. So we're going to make sure that that the design would have a barrier there, so that it would provide a safety between the kids and the cars.
And also the plan will provide for some access from the route on Main Street up to Fairlawn View along one of the side streets.
All the way,
Yeah, that's what.
I mean, that's really.
They haven't decided on
concern.
which street or exactly what that would look
So-
like, because that's dependent upon public input, but my understanding is there would be then access directly to the school from that route.
Right, I think if you're gonna run out of money, I'd rather it be out on Main Street than in that last 100 yards.
Well, sure. In fact, exactly, that's exactly true. And giving you the exact specifics, though, is really tough, because it has to go through a public process.
Sure.
So it's not only the public process, it's also, you have to have a designer. We have some conceptual ideas from that original mobility study, but, it really has to go through a really detailed process.
It's good.
The frustrating part is that we have so many of these projects online, and I just, you almost like to see them go right now, but it's a very slow, deliberate process, which I guess is good in a way, because at least you make sure that we cover all of our bases, and we make sure that we choose things that are actually safe and accomplish the mission that we're trying to accomplish, which is to give kids an opportunity to either bike or walk to school. A nice advantage of that for your people who live around the schools is if you can reduce the number of cars, then the superintendent will be getting a lot less complaints, and I will as well. So, that's the goal, is to get kids using their 2 feet, healthy, and it achieves a lot of the greenhouse gas reduction. There's a number of objectives for the project. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to come.
And Tony, what's our procedure here? It's not an action item, but do we discuss it and direct you to do something or not? Or I just like to say I'm in support of us
As am I.
doing a letter on this
I am
project.
also.
I think it's a wonderful.
So consider that direction from the board to write a letter in support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, 11B is receive the findings and recommendations from the Immersion Study Group. And We also have a comment from the public on this item as well, which we'll do post the presentation.
Your preference.
My preference. What, we'll only take the comment now, and then we can have that in context. That's Nadia Nekrep, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if that's...
Yeah, that's correct.
All right,
All good.
because I'm Papalardo, you know, it can be brutal sometimes. All right,
Yeah, it's all good.
welcome.
Thank you. This is kind of scary, but I just wanted to say a few words. I'm the parent of a girl who is in Spanish immersion this year, and she's very happy there, and we are very happy. But this time last year, we were not happy. We were at the very bottom of the waiting list, and we were very disappointed. And even when you guys added the 4th class, she was still number 11 on the waiting list, and so this didn't give us a lot of hope for her to get in. And so I knew as a parent, I knew that this was the right program for her, and it was almost like staring at the locked ice cream shop and seeing the ice cream but not being able to get in. And so I know her, I know how she functions, I know how she learns. I knew this was going to be good for her, but still there was not much hope for us at that point. I grew up in Europe, and I learned multiple languages from very early on, and that really kind of broadened my horizons from the very beginning. There is also a lot of research out there that, you know, tells us that kids' brain develops differently when they learn multiple languages at the same time, and this is the time for that. These early years are very important for that. And so I think every kid should have the opportunity to learn multiple languages, even if they're not coming from bilingual families. And so anyway, the year started, and 3 weeks into the school year, the spot opened up for her. So she eventually ended up in a program, which was great. And so we are very, very thankful for that. I just wanted to say that having this option for all the children is very important. And thank you for giving us this incredible program. And I hope that you will do everything in your power this year as well for parents who are on the waiting list, so that they can, you know, have their children in the program, and that they don't have to go through, you know, a lot of waiting, a lot of stress. And even though we are in, and we were like at the very bottom of the list, I know that there were a few children who didn't end up in the program because when the school year started, they went to private schools, and so parents just couldn't pull them out of that after the spots were open. So a few kids who really wanted to be in, they were not. And so, so yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. And obviously the board, the reason we're here today is we are doing a very thoughtful assessment of the immersion program from kindergarten through the high school, so that we can make the right decisions for the community. So thank you for your feedback today.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry? You may. There you go. All right. I know how to pronounce this one. Mike Alifano. Mike wants to speak on this item as well. So Mike,
good evening. Board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. First off, I would like to just thank you for doing such a great job so far, and very proud to have my oldest, John, in kindergarten now, and I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about some help from maybe a 4th class for immersion. I know the wait list is up there compared to last year. Not as up there, but it's still in the 18s, I think. We were fortunate enough to get a spot, and John is flourishing. Senor Hodge is a teacher. Yeah, very, very lucky. And a little story. I volunteered with Chamber and Rotary at the high school several years ago, and it was a wonderful experience. But when I got to talk to all the kids and do mock interviews and give them my slice of advice in life after high school, it was amazing to see how well those kids were doing and what colleges they were going to. And the common denominator in every one of those kids was a foreign language. And so I knew right then that was what we wanted to do for our daughter and eventually our son. So the opportunity is amazing. I want to thank you for that, and see if you can, with this report tonight and some other work that I know you guys are doing quite a bit of, we could find a way to get all those kids in that immersion program. And I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. All right, so no further comments then. We'll receive the findings and recommendation for the immersion study group. And I will move out of the way.
Good evening. I first like to begin by calling up my co-presenters. First is Ramona Alvarado, who is the president of SIPA.
Welcome.
Also Joyce Hodge, who is a kindergarten immersion teacher at Hatch and one of the founding faculty of the Cabrillo Unified Immersion Program. And Jim Ward, who is our principal at Hatch. So the four of us are going to be co-presenting this report, and I have the pleasure of beginning this presentation and giving some background and context to the work of the Immersion Study Group. Last year, as the governing board and I were contemplating and then eventually finalizing district-wide goals, one of the goals emerged was to take a comprehensive look at our immersion program. One of the reasons we did that, or of the reasons that we did that, included the popularity of the program at Hatch and the inability to serve all interested community members. There was a sense that it was difficult to recruit English learner native Spanish-speaking families into the program. There was also a concern of the potential impact of the magnet program drawing from the community and the impact that had at our other elementary sites. There was also a perceived lack of that we had a comprehensive program K-12, meaning that what we had at the elementary school was a content-based program, meaning that students were learning and writing and thinking in Spanish about 90% of the time in kindergarten, moving to about 50% of the time by the time they matriculated out of 5th grade. At Cunha, it was a foreign language program at 0 period, and there was also an issue with English learners not having access to those foreign language components because of their need to be in English language development coursework, which was also offered during the 0 period. And then we also wanted to ensure that achievement and English language acquisition of our English learners was at least comparable to that of our other students. So that was the genesis behind the formation of the group. The governing board provided direction to do that. I convened the group in September. The group consists of parents in the community, both immersion parents, non-immersion parents, SIPA representatives, teachers of both immersion and non-immersion, principals of schools of both immersion and non-immersion, and district support included Dr. Shuck and myself, participated in a year-long study. And the group began with a deep analysis of student data. And this was really a journey. And I just want to acknowledge the tremendous work of the approximately 25 individuals who were regular contributors to the study group because they came with lots of questions, great questions. They wanted to overturn that stone and look at it from every single angle and make sure that all of our questions were answered. And we kept at that for quite a few sessions until we felt we had a good picture of the district and what was happening. So beyond the analysis of student data, we reviewed relevant research on dual immersion programs. We invited and was thankfully received. Dr. Rosa Molina attended, and Dr. Molina is one of the forefront researchers and practitioners of dual immersion in the United States, and she's close by in San Jose, so as a resource, she was invaluable. She also has a long history working with Cabrillo Unified School District and mostly at Hatch Elementary, so she's really well-known, respected, and valued partner in this process. We looked at the capacity of Hatch to support a growing program. Hatch not only houses the immersion program, but also houses a traditional English program. And between the two of them, we're at about 665 students, which is a good 100 students beyond what the school was designed to support. And then another issue that we looked at was difficulty in recruiting EL students to the program. So I'm going to walk us through a little bit of data and then turn it over to my presentation colleagues. The first set of information, and again, what I'm presenting here tonight are what we felt were some key data points. It's not everything that we looked at, and it certainly doesn't tell every story for every student. They're just data points that will help us tell the story. So again, the first thing we looked at was English Language Arts scores from the California Standards Test from 2010 to 2013 over a 4-year period. And we looked at the percent of students who scored proficient or advanced, which is the benchmark for which we want all of our kids to attain. And you can see across the first grouping is our immersion native English speakers. Our second grouping are our traditional program at Hatch, native English speakers. The third group is our immersion native Spanish speakers. And the fourth and final group, all the way over here to the right, if you're in the audience, is our traditional program English learners. So you can see that there's an excess of 85% across the board of those students who were in the immersion program, native English speakers, who scored at those highest levels. And then you can see just under 60%, except for 1 year, for the native English speakers in the traditional program. And then some really up and down years for the English learners in both programs. Both years that were up for both, and both years that were down for both. And so that's sort of interesting. And but nonetheless, you know, the overall scores there are well below what we would want to see. The next, looking at how well are our English learners in the immersion program acquiring English, we looked at CELT scores. And CELT is the California English Language Development Test, and there are sub-scores for listening, speaking, writing, and reading, and these are overall aggregate scores for all students in those years, kindergarten through 5th grade students. And so you can see a 3 is at the middle level, where we want kids, when we reclassify them as proficient, to be in the 4+ range, between 4 and 5. 5 is the highest on this metric, between 1 and 5. And so we can see that for the most part, kids are right around that 3, and they're slightly lower in the immersion program, but really not significantly.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is there any difference in classroom support? In other words, classroom aides in those two courses?
In between the immersion program and the traditional program, no.
Immersion, you still have teaching assistants and aides and people balancing out the class size.
Yeah, the Amities. But the immersion, the SIPA program does provide the Amity Scholars to support the immersion program, which are, students from foreign countries that come in
and all of those,
assist out.
So that would reduce class size.
Well, they're not instructors.
No, but.
But they're there to be helpful.
Okay.
And then in the last 2 years, the English traditional program has actually had MD scholars in their classrooms as well at Hatch.
Yeah.
Provided by SIPA?
No, provided by the PTO.
That's in addition to AIDS?
There's no
Right.
AIDS, Kurt, not AIDS?
There are very few instructional assistants outside
Didn't Michael
of,
answer
outside
the
of
question?
special
No,
education,
yeah.
really in many districts. Okay, so the next set of data we looked at was English language scores on the California Standards Test. Again, this is the big end of the year test that we're just now migrating away from. Again, immersion students, native English speakers, we compared their scores at 5th grade and then 2 years later when they were 7th graders in 2013, and which was last year. And so you can see here that the number of kids who scored proficient and advanced as 5th graders was identical to that as 7th graders, except that many of those students who had scored proficient as 5th graders moved up and scored advanced as 7th graders. So it's an upward trajectory in terms of their scores for this group of kids. That represents 2 students who scored at the basic level, 0 scored below basic or far below basic, which are at the wrong end, if you will, of the continuum. And then these are for the same test and for the same periods of comparison of our native Spanish speakers in the immersion program. Same number, none of those students scored advanced. The same number as in 5th grade scored as 7th grade in proficient. And then you can see that there's the bulk of the kids as 5th graders scored at the basic level, which is, getting close to proficient but not quite there. And then as 7th graders, an interesting trend begins is that fewer kids scored at basic, more kids scored at below basic, and as 5th graders where we didn't have any scoring far below basic, we have a population of kids there. So their trend was opposite of what the native English speakers.
Do you have that same data for the non-immersion students?
I believe we did look at that. I don't have it in the set, and I know that the full packet, the full report has the full data set that we looked at, this is a subset of that. One of the goals of a dual immersion program is fluency in both the target language, in this case Spanish, and in English, which is the language of California and the United States. So one of the indicators of our students attaining Spanish fluency is enrollment in AP Spanish in the high school. So we looked at, this is current year enrollment, and we disaggregated who's in those classes, who's taking those sections. And we found that there are 38 native English speakers enrolled this year. We have 12 English learners and 43 students who are former English learners who have been reclassified as proficient. They have attained English proficiency, which is the goal we have for all English learners. So the lightest blue represents our native English speakers, the darker blue represents our English learners, and the green represents our former English learners, are reclassified. And what's interesting here is that, first off, out of the Hatch Immersion program, 15 native English speakers are present, but there's an equal number of native English speakers in those AP classes that didn't attend elementary school in our district. They went to other schools, came here, and they're as proficient and ready for this class as our students coming out of Hatch. And another thing that's obviously very interesting here is that of the students who have been reclassified, the majority, 21 of those kids came from El Granada, as opposed to 10 for Hatch and 10 for Fairlawn View. So there's, we would hope to see a predominance of students who came through the Hatch Immersion program in our AP classes. We want to see them more highly represented. So one of the things that we wanted to understand is what is the actual impact on El Granada and Farallon View with families migrating to the immersion program. And one of the issues that we heard was, or that was assumed, was that parents in the immersion program have more financial resources, more time, and those kinds of things as well to give to the program, and therefore that withdraws that away from those other schools, and perhaps even the English-only program at Hatch. And we don't collect or have any way of knowing what family income levels are, but we do know what the education levels are for our families, because that's part of the registration, part of the data we're required to collect when students enroll. And there is a direct correlation in all research that between level of education and income. So what we can see here very clearly is that, again, with that lightest blue line representing our native English speakers in the immersion program at Hatch, is that you have about 43% that have a postgraduate degree and about 45% that have at least a college degree. So, my simple math is that that's about 87% of those families have at least a college degree, if not a postgraduate degree. And then you can see that for our non-immersion English, native English speakers, that those are less. At the other end of the spectrum, we can see that in the darkest blue, that our Hispanic families, a very significant percentage, do not have a high school degree. So there is not only is there greater, higher education levels in the immersion program for native English speakers, but there's also this tremendous gap in education between our Hispanic families and our native English families. Here we are with getting close to the end of the data. This is our ultimate goal, is to reclassify students, our English learners, as completely fluent reading, writing, listening, speaking, users of English, academic English. And you can see that they're very, very parallel. So by 8th grade, students who go through the immersion program, English learners, we've reclassified about 61%. And for students who go through our traditional programs, we reclassify about 62%. So this lets us know that our English learners in the Hatch program are doing as well as those who are not in the immersion program. Not doing any better, not doing any worse. So now I'm going to turn it over to Joyce, and then we're going to tag team through the rest of the presentation.
Good evening. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what an effective two-way immersion program should look like, the things that we talked about and our findings. One of the most important ones is number one, because it's important that a child has at least 8 years of a language before you can actually find proficiency and bilingualism. So that's probably one of the most important things when you have a child in the immersion program, is to make sure that you keep him in the program so that the results are the right ones. The number two is very important that all the components of the program are well articulated all throughout the life of the program, from K all the way to the 12th grade, so that we have a way of evaluating where the children are at each one of the grade levels. Now, following the program with fidelity is also something that we talked about, and this is what Rosa Molina is helping us do, is going back and actually looking at what are the practices that we need to be following, what is the percentage of Spanish that we need to be true to, and how to present the lessons so that we have the best results with the children. Number 4 is obvious. I mean, that's true all the way through. Families are deeply involved, and we make sure that they're always invited into the classrooms to see what's going on. Number 5, this is a really, really, really key factor, and this is one that we are studying very closely, and also with Rosa Molina, is that all of our English learners are acquiring English at the speed that we want them to. Not to take away from the Spanish that they're learning, but to make sure that the methods that we use to teach English to our Spanish immersion children is the best and most efficient way to get them to where we want them to be at the end of the immersion life of the program. Number 6, that's another really, really important one that we're going to be talking about a little bit too, recruiting the families a little later, but we want to keep it a 50-50 ratio as much as possible. In kindergarten, we usually start with 60-40 because of the attrition, being that some of the English-speaking families may leave sometime, not because they're dissatisfied, but because they're moving or because there's a learning disability that needs to be taken care of. There's different reasons. So then what happens is our Spanish-speaking students can and do come into the program, and that changes the ratio later on. But we do try to keep it a 50-50 from the very beginning. It's really important to have both groups of children. Do we have any questions so far before I go?
Before you move on, number 4, the families are deeply involved. Does that hold true for the English only as well as the EL families?
I don't think so. I think that it depends. It depends on every year. A lot of the families work.
Yes.
And it's gotten to that way with all the families now. You know, a lot of the parents are working. It's difficult, but they do get involved, and they get involved by coming to the meetings, by being there when you ask them to be, and by helping the children at home.
Right.
Yeah.
And on number 5, the systematic strategies that staff would use for the English language students, would those be strategies that would be used in the EO program as well?
We hope so. And this is what we're working on. Rosa Molina is telling us that we all need to work together on that. And I think that we try to learn from each other at school as well, and borrow things. I mean, we were trying the GLAD strategies, and that's something that we're working on. And so we're hoping that, and this is a district-wide effort, really. We're hoping that by working together, we can create a program that helps all of our English learners in both programs. That's our goal.
And just one more question about the 50-50 ratio. If families do leave the program, say by 3rd or 4th grade, that throws everything into a tilt, doesn't it, in the sense that the 50-50 ratio is no longer there?
Well, you want it as much as possible, especially.
Can you achieve that at that grade level?
In 3rd grade?
At the 4th grade, 5th grade? I mean.
No, because you can't, if the English-speaking children are, I mean, if there's not enough English speakers from native English-speaking families, then only the Spanish.
So entrance into the program is limited to the ELs?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Because, but they still have to be tested in. They need to be
right.
bilingual. Yeah.
But at 4th grade, you wouldn't take an EL?
No, because they're not ready. I mean, unless they've had Spanish or they've been in a Spanish immersion program, it would be very, very, very difficult for them to come into the immersion program.
Okay. Do they take newcomers into the immersion program?
They do if there's space, they do, and it depends on whether or not they're Spanish.
Remember we used to have the newcomers club?
Yes.
And that went by the wayside, so, yeah.
Newcomers being English only? Or
Non-English speaking newcomers.
So English language learning?
Yeah, they've
Yes.
just moved
So
here.
you're,
Straight from Mexico.
so the only way an English-only student can be in the program is it from kindergarten onward, correct?
Usually we prefer kindergarten. Sometimes they come in halfway through 1st grade or towards the end of 1st grade if they've had a little Spanish or tutoring at home. but it's very difficult. We have done it, but it's a very difficult thing to
And
do.
so if there's attrition, you do bring in English language learners into them?
The Spanish-speaking children can come in first and second grade, in any grade, if their Spanish is proficient enough to work with our program. They can't, how can I explain this? It's very difficult for English-speaking students to come into the program later than first grade. But a Spanish speaker, because we're doing most of the instruction in Spanish, can come into the program later on, because that's the language that they already know.
Do we know if they benefit if they are late to enter the program? Or are they also encumbered,
No.
perhaps more so than in English?
If a Spanish speaker comes into the program and has no English background at all, yes, they will benefit, because they will continue to learn in their own language while they're learning English, and they will not miss any of the academic instruction. So that was part of being in a bilingual program in the past. That was their philosophy, but it also works in an immersion program for a Spanish-speaking student who doesn't have any English at the beginning, because we can give them all the help they need.
But you've tracked those kids, and you know how they're ultimately ending up. The kids that were not in the program from kindergarten onwards, that were later to enter, they were eligible to enter based on testing or whatever, and you know how they turned out as far as AP, Spanish, or whatever your
I
goal
don't
was.
know if we track
I
this
think
that
it's
way.
very hard we don't have like a tracking system within the school district to track all the kids. To get this data was very hard, and it took lots of hours from the staff to pull the data that we were able to show you. There's not a way to track any child right now, although going through the system.
There hasn't been. We'll get to that a little bit later, but that's one of our first findings is that we, only while they're at Hatch are the students labeled in our student information system as immersion students. And once they leave that program and go to CUNY, they're no longer, that tag doesn't follow them. And so it's very difficult to go to, say, an 11th grade group of kids and look back to see who participated in immersion or not. We've had to go back and look at rosters and then individually make custom groups of those kids. So it's been very painstaking to do that. We have since changed that, and we now have a tag that will follow those kids as long as they're in our system.
That's one of the recommendations, isn't it?
Correct, and it's been active.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that was realized, was through this study? That this
Well, it
long-running
may have
program?
been in place with the prior student information system, but when we converted 3 years ago, it wasn't in place at the beginning of the school year. So 3 years ago, we changed systems, and that wasn't the case. So.
Any other questions about this part? Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Rosa Molina been working with us, as Dr. Rourke said, and she has brought in a lot of good data to show that that students need to go all the way through 8th grade in order to catch up and to learn the English language. So it's really important that we look at that when we're creating our immersion program, and that we're looking at how and what are the best methods and how we structure the classes so that our students benefit from all of our instruction and are able to catch up. In other words, to be reclassified before 8th grade if possible. And one of the things that she talked about, and that's really, really, really important, is to make sure that our students have more Spanish than they have right now, that they have content instruction in Spanish through 8th grade. And that's one of the things that we're working on. Is he not here now?
He's there. He's right there.
as you will find out, there is something that is in the works for our Cunha Intermediate School, and that is going to be changed for our immersion students so that that happens, so that we have content instruction through 8th grade. And so that's what her recommendation is at the bottom of number 3, is to restructure middle school and make sure that our practices at Hatch are the best that we can have for our immersion students. So I'm very happy to say that Dr. Molina is going to be a big help, and I'm thrilled to have her working with us.
What is it, in your view, that magic 8th grade that allows the English only for everybody to come to the same level?
It's what happens is because a language, as studies and research shows, that a person does not fully is not fully bilingual or learns a language completely unless you give them time, and the time is usually 8 years or 9 years, really. It sometimes takes less time. It could be 5, it could be 6, but in order to make sure the students are successful, you need to give them all the way, at least all the way to 8th grade, with a second language, whether it's English or Spanish.
Was there any part of the discussion, I know it's not up here, but relative to kids who are leaving middle school now, who were in immersion, a way to give them that full power of language that they lost
if they leave 8th grade or before 8th grade?
Well, they haven't, right now in middle school, besides the 0 period, they don't get that full multilingual
Oh, so you're saying if they
experience.
didn't get the advantage of what they might get in the future?
Right, they didn't get it because we don't have it in place now. When they hit
0
high
period.
school, is there a strategy around how to expose them to Spanish?
They're also looking at restructuring or looking at what's going to change at the high school. But as for the students that have already gone through the system, my only recommendation has nothing to do with school. The best recommendation would be for them to go to be an exchange student or be like an Amity Scholar reverse from here to a Spanish-speaking country. And that's really where they can see that the language is there. All they need is the practice. So.
Thank you.
College abroad, Rob.
Put that on the list.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. You're welcome.
Good evening. As Dr. Rourke mentioned earlier, the capacity at Hatch, as everyone knows, is a big issue. I experience it, and our staff experiences it every day. We literally don't have an open classroom in the school to do any extended programs or things that we would like to do. It's difficult, and as you know, the refurbishing and the remodeling of Hatch is scheduled to happen, but it's not happening yet. And with adding the 4th kindergarten class last year, and again we'll have 4 first grade immersion classes next year, it is an ongoing daily challenge. There's difficulty in recruiting EL students, and we're starting to really get to the heart of the matter. It's believed there's a misunderstanding by the EL students they won't acquire English, and also many of the families that are interested in don't have the transportation to Hatch. And just going back to the Cunha issue, I for several years taught that 0 period immersion class, not immersion class, 0 period ELD class, where a lot of the EL students were pulled out of immersion and put into an EL class, and their program or the length of the program was interrupted. So I got to see that. The first finding is that which we've talked about already, it was difficult to extract data because of there was not an identifier in the system, and this is already happening. That we've added and tagged added an identifier in the Infinite Campus program for our students within this program, so we can follow and track them. The second recommendation is that the first finding and recommendation is that the EL immersion students do excel academically, but the EL immersion students are not excelling to the degree they should. And that, what I just mentioned, they don't continue past 5th grade, and the content instruction in Spanish ends for them there, because again, because of their status as EL students and not meeting the standards, they have been placed in a 0 period ELD class. So the recommendation comes out of this is to eliminate the 0 period Spanish and have content instruction in Spanish language arts and one other content area, social studies perhaps, and recalibrate how the program is structured so the pathway from kindergarten through 8th grade is clear. And this would provide the staff and the administration with the ability to do that, to have professional development and resources to support the program.
John, did we look at staffing, our current staffing? Do we have folks in play, or would we have to hire in to be able to teach social studies or any other class that was in Spanish?
Yes, that is a process, and we are in coordination with Alva Lopez, the principal, and looking at those specific identified content areas to make sure that staff is appropriately credentialed to teach that content within the day. So there is staff available. It's not as in surplus as we'd like to see at the middle school level in particular, but we do aggressively post and pursuing for 14, 15.
If I could just jump in there, there is available staff to implement the program for 6th grade next year, which is the thought. It would be this year's 5th graders would have this content-based program, eliminating 0 period for them, and there is staff available, willing, interested, on board to provide that content instruction. But when that group moves to 7th grade, and then eventually to 8th grade as we grow the program each year, there would be some additional staffing needs, very, very likely. If not coming from within, certainly wouldn't be hired from without. So year one, we're in really good shape.
Thank you.
Yeah, and indeed utilizing the current staffing, but also looking like at expanding the content areas into math and looking beyond in all of those identified content areas. But for next year, for language arts and social studies, we have a current staff member, currently on leave, but hopefully returning. She is returning, but even expanding it into the other content, that'll be a goal.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm going to move into finding number 3, which is something that was already touched upon a little bit, that our EL immersion students are not really acquiring English at the level found in exemplary programs. And this was something that Rosa Molina talked about, and something that we need to work all together as a district. And one of the recommendations to do this was to make sure that we have a comprehensive plan that includes the way that we teach, the instruction, the resources that we use, and obviously maybe some professional development to help all of us be together and help our EL students as a district. And this is for both programs again. It's not just for the immersion students, but for all our EL students in the district. Press down.
Yep.
Now, this is also something that was touched upon a little bit, and it's something that I was surprised about, actually, when we were meeting, that the students are not enrolling at the high school AP Spanish courses to the level expected. And that's not just the native English speakers, but also the Spanish-speaking students. And it makes me a little sad, because I know how enthusiastic the students are at the elementary level. So to see that they're not actually signing up for this at the high school was something that I learned about. And so restructuring, again, the middle school immersion program to provide more content instruction makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that's something that we're working on and I'm really excited about as well. And I don't know if Lalo wants to say anything about that or if you have any questions about that.
Well, I have a question that begs
Yes.
back to the study and you talked about earlier, which is still resonating in me after being in public education for 27 years and watching children come through as non-English speakers in greater and greater numbers. So I appreciate that challenge in more ways than one. You know, I'm hearing that the success of our program, there's a lot of reasons why. The unique, unified nature of our district, the ability to move these kids through to the 8th grade, starting at K level, that's amazing. Wonder how many districts out there in the state wish they were unified and could, at our size, and actually create something like this, right? But I'm wondering when children come in older from Mexico, let's say, and they're facing, as 9th graders or 8th graders, the same challenge. How much of it is should the classes, based on your understanding, is having English speakers and non-English speakers from the get-go in that same room speaking Spanish, learning Spanish, is that the vitality, is that the driving force? And should we, based on your experience, have something similar to that, if we can, at the high school level? And if we could, how could we? How could we even begin to address that 8-year, coefficient to try to get those kids up to speed that come in later?
Are you speaking of having something that starts at the high school or something that continues?
I know it does in some cases, in the sense that we have non-English speakers that come into our high school and they don't speak English or they speak very little. And I know that challenge is extraordinary to try to get them subject matter instruction, right? And I know that traditionally what I see in some places is they house those kids together, shelter them together, and try to get them, or they as they get past level 1 or level 2, then they seed them into the existing classes, right? So I guess this is really fascinating to me, but I see that other challenge of it, and I'm just wondering if you guys at all looked at that.
At the high school, they've created a class that's Spanish for Spanish speakers. So our Spanish-speaking students that come in, if they're a native speaker coming from Mexico, they're going to be in that class with the high-level Spanish that the immersion kids are receiving. But I think what you're talking about is subject or core subject instruction in Spanish at the high school level.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have anything like that. Not yet, anyway. Just levels, right? No, this was something that was not discussed, but it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, it really is. It's related, but it's slightly off of what our mission was, which is the immersion program.
Right.
This is how to serve newcomers, students who come to us late in their educational career, late by K-12 organization standards, middle school or above, and how do we best serve and transition those students to English. A large part of that has to do, frankly, is what has been their educational experience prior to showing up in Africa.
That's right.
If they've had a strong educational experience in their native language, whether it's Chinese, Spanish, or whatever, then that transition can be made more quickly because it's a transference of concepts and ideas where they're thinking academically in their native language to English. If they haven't had a strong academic experience and they're not academically proficient in their native language, then that's going to be more difficult. And we have a little program at CUNY where we have a group of kids who are recent newcomers. We have a one-on-one, not a one-on-one, but an instructional support person, Spanish English proficient, who works with those 4 students, follows them through, they're grouped together in core classes, and provides instruction-based language support as they transition and become more proficient in English. So, here we don't have tremendous numbers of newcomers, but we have them, so we have to be a little creative in how we serve them.
I'll just finish my little presentation here with just one thought. I was a newcomer. I came into the United States when I was in 8th grade, I spoke no English, and I had a very strong academic background, good school, and I can say that I was placed in a like a 6th grade class at the beginning because they didn't think I could do it, and they moved me up 2 grades by the end of the year because I learned how to speak English really fast. But it was because I had a strong academic background. So that's exactly what happens. So if a child comes in prepared, they're not going to have a difficult time. So it's what they need is the academic backing of any kind.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak to findings of number 5. Our school district immersion program is a magnet program and for our community. Families throughout the coastside choose to attend in order to obtain a biliterate education for their children. The collected data shows that the English-speaking families in immersion are more often than not highly educated and have higher incomes than in other district programs. Therefore, the concern exists that the immersion program draws potential family resources away from other elementary schools on the coast side. Our recommendation is to provide other K-5 schools the resources to develop their own magnet-style programs. And we recognize that not every program is right for every child, but that strong and unified program is regardless of theme benefits students. Currently, El Granada is exploring a STEM program, and Fair Lawn-View is focusing on developing an environmental science curriculum. We encourage the district to support our other elementary schools as they explore ways to strengthen the education programs. Families on the coast would then be able to choose the right educational path for their child, because we realize that immersion is not for every child. So we support the district in trying to help the other 2 elementary schools find their magnet program to draw from.
Where would funding for providing other schools with this? Because you had said that the only cost was the last recommendation, but this is clearly kind of advocating for additional funding. Would it be other funding schools are getting now that they would then put towards this, or are there other ideas for providing this
Well,
funding?
resources aren't always financial. So, I mean, in-house, we would have to take a look at, perhaps it's grant writing. We do not provide the immersion program any resources, district resources, that any other program provides. And so that becomes problematic when you're favoring one program over the other with extra dollars. But we could certainly help them and support them through making connections in the community and those kinds of things. We really weren't envisioning.
So resources meant staff support, not,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we weren't envisioning additional funds.
I'll go on to number 6. Our immersion program has become more and more popular as the wealth of data showing the benefits of biliteracy have grown. Currently, Hatch cannot accommodate all the families that want into the program, and as we stated, it's just a size. Hatch cannot grow beyond what it is right now. And our focus group all came to the conclusion that we feel one site dedicated to the immersion program can provide significant benefits. Hosting two distinct programs at one school site creates many challenges, not only for families but also for the teachers. Having multiple programs can leave some teachers isolated. Currently, I think Hatch only has one traditional kindergarten class, so that teacher doesn't have someone to kind of bounce ideas off of, and we realize that. The socioeconomic demographics and family availability between the programs creates some confusion as to why some classes have more volunteers or go on more field trips than the other classes. And the fact that there are different programs influences the ability to make an all school the solution. We recommend that the district dedicate one site to the immersion model. Also, additionally, our group, at the end of our discussions, it was brought up possibly a K-8 program with the immersion program. And we as a group did not look into that any further, but personally, I would like the opportunity to explore that more, but that was not our initial goal with this focus group. But it was brought up at the end that a K through 8 might be one of the solutions to the problem we're having. And then the other thing that came up in our group was talked about by the other teachers, because the focus group had representatives from all the schools. And one of the things that some of the other teachers had mentioned, because all of our schools have high Hispanic population, would to dedicate some block of time at each of the schools with a second language. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Spanish, but we all now see the benefits of the dual language, and getting that into all the schools would benefit all the children.
One of the things that I heard during my travels to open houses from some of the teachers and some of the parents was the fear of having a one location immersion program be open to the entire district, because it would draw those very active, very focused, and filled pocket parents to that school and create a very rich PTA environment. And then there would be this inequality, if you will, of parent involvement and financial support. And I'm just wondering if that conversation ever came to light
Yes.
in your, it did?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that goes back to one of our earlier data things, was that the English families have all college degrees, and the Hispanic families do not. So that does create an imbalance, and it creates an imbalance within the classrooms at the school for the traditional and the immersion classrooms. And I know in the past the teachers will try to pair up, because you just wouldn't have the volunteers in the traditional program that you would in the immersion program. Also, the field trips and stuff, you wouldn't have the parent drivers, because some of the Hispanic families don't have the insurance required to take the kids on field trips. So one of my recommendations to our PTO at Hatch was, if your parents and your classes want field trips, then we need to look at the PTO money and get them busing, find a way to get them on field trips, or pair up with other teachers. And that's where having the two separate programs under one roof kind of creates that inequality. So having one site dedicated would eliminate that, because you'd have all the classes would be immersion.
I think what Michael is saying is that one site would be advantageous to the non-advantageous other sites. Instead of being classroom to classroom, it would be school site to school site.
So the other thing we
saying
found,
that right, Michael?
Yeah, you would have very dedicated parents in all the elementary schools, very involved, who would then want their children to be at that. They'd move from those communities where they were supporting and enriching to this one school, and now those schools would lose those very valuable parents.
That's already happening.
It's already, yeah.
Well, that's my point, yeah.
And that's why, we are looking at, providing those unique experiences, magnet-style programs at both El Granada and Fairlawn so that they have a draw as well. So with our community adjacent to Silicon Valley, and if you look across our community, a STEM program would make it a real desire. There are a lot of engineers.
Now I get that. Maybe performing arts or something too, digital performing
that's
arts.
the whole plan, is to get those magnet.
To have a unique program that attracts people, so that's we already have an immersion program, and it already is, as we know, it's already drawing affluent, involved parents. So let's just have that flow going all over the place, to all the schools, and for the reasons that resonate with families.
Maybe we go year around and do a wheel.
Whoa. That wasn't part of our discussion.
Okay. Now, this is something that I noticed a while back, and we're finding that many of our EL families want their children to learn English, and so they look at immersion as something that is going to take away from that rather than help their children. So We've had a hard time recruiting some of the students because of that, because they don't really understand what immersion is. So what we're trying to do now is to provide more information for them, a chance for them to come and see the program, a chance for them to have discussions on how immersion works. They tend to believe that if the children are going to learn in Spanish at the beginning, that they're never going to learn English. And so what we're trying to show them is that they're learning English at the same speed that the other students are in the other program. That's not the problem. The problem is that we need to fix the way that we're teaching English throughout the district. So our recommendation is to expand the recruitment of EL families because we want to have the right percentage in our classrooms. And we want to show that EL students in immersion do at least as well as other EL students. The other problem was that the transportation was difficult for some of the families. Some of the families are being bused from Moonridge all the way to Fairlawn View, but there is no bus to come to Hatch for the immersion program, so it was difficult for them to sign up to come to the immersion program. So we want to make sure that we look at all these things for recruiting our Spanish-speaking students, because they're obviously a very important part of our immersion program, and we want them to feel that this program is for them as well, obviously. Any questions about this part?
Joyce, can you help me understand that last sentence?
Yeah. What? Study
With the
enrollment?
goal of giving EL families better options. What does that mean?
No.
The better option is to...
Well, other options probably should be the word. It's better options for them to make a choice, in other words, because they don't know what the immersion program is, a lot of them. One time when I presented to them, they asked me if this was an after-school program, because they didn't understand what immersion education was, and I had to explain it to them. And once they understand and they come and see, then that's what a better option is. It doesn't mean that this is the program for all of our Spanish-speaking students. We always try to give them a choice as far as realizing this is what this program does and this is what this program does. If you would like your child to be bilingual and biliterate, then send them to immersion. If your goal is for your child to learn English only, then that's their goal. They don't need to be in the immersion program. But I don't know if that's the correct word, whether better options. Other options would be the word.
I think other options would be a much better way of saying that. As a former EO teacher. Yeah.
Joy,
You can't help yourself, Katie.
I know, I'm so sorry.
Joy, I apologize thank you for indulging me on my questions. I have a question for you and Tony quickly regarding, for the Tony for the LCAP, is this transportation issue something that we could take a look at as part of that plan? Would that be appropriate based on those indicators that the state is bringing forward to us that support that low income?
Well,
food for thought on that.
It could be. It's not currently in the current draft of the LCAP, but it is certainly any service that we provide is delegated to the LCAP.
And Joy, my question to you, are we actively recruiting at the Los Listos program?
Yes, I am.
I will be at their transition ceremony.
I am. I go to.
Thank you.
I go to
figured so, too.
I go to the sites. I go to the preschools. I go wherever I can go when I know that our native Spanish speakers are and our families are, and I present to them and I tell them that they need to look at their choices. They need to make the right decision for their children, but this is the program that exists in the district, and it is for them if they wish to have it so. Yes, but we need to do more of it. We need to do more parent education district-wide for the parents to know what is out there for them so they make the right choice.
It's always good for the community to be as informed as possible,
Yes.
of course. But I'm just looking back through the data. Are we trying to solve for a problem that doesn't necessarily exist? I mean, what is our current distribution towards that 50-50 goal?
Right now, we have, it's good. Right now, it's good. Last year, there were many families who did not sign up their students to the immersion program, or they came in really late when the classes were already full.
But we're at capacity as far as the goal of 50-50 and the number of students that we can put in the program with the number of classes we're allocating right now. Is that an accurate statement?
Do you want to?
In terms of the capacity of the site, yes.
Okay.
We have a waiting list, as a parent is
Absolutely.
stating,
I
and
understand that, yep.
yeah.
But there isn't a waiting list for EL families.
Right, TEO families.
Right.
Yeah, the waiting list is for
There is a waiting
There's
list.
3 on the list.
Oh, there are?
There's 3.
Oh, okay.
Can I ask you, what's the impact of home language of whatever language is spoken at home on the ability of either the EO or the EL kids to succeed in this program? Specifically, do you have any idea how many of the English-only families do speak Spanish at home? Is there immersion at home as well as in the classroom?
No, a lot of the families do not speak Spanish at home. Of the English-speaking
100%?
families. No, I wouldn't say it's 100%. Some of the families may be bilingual, but the majority of the families have the kids in the program because they want them to have what they didn't have.
So, it's not likely that, I mean, do you believe that it might be beneficial if those families did carry out speaking Spanish at home? And would that help benefit this middle school gap or issue like that? You know, the burden seems to be all on the district, but I'm wondering how much of that is also on the home side.
I don't know if I understand the question.
If the parents...
I can answer that. So basically, Dr. Reamer, the English speakers, as you noticed from the data on the parent education levels, are coming from fluent English-speaking families. The Spanish speakers are not all coming from fluent Spanish-speaking families. So they're not starting at an equal level of language in either language.
So it'd be just as challenging for them, wouldn't it? I mean, it would be the invert. And that's, so, but as far as understanding the impact of that, nobody has any data. Is that true?
That's true.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Finding, I guess, number 8. The district is aware that although we want to have a K-12 immersion program, the practice is that there's really 3 different programs going on. It lacks a cohesive K-12 plan and articulation, and this is one of the reasons why we really need Rosa Molina, so that we can have something that goes through K through 12, and it's something that works together in a cohesive way, and that assures us that the students are going to be bilingual and biliterate by the end of the 12th grade. So the recommendation is to create a position to coordinate the district's K-12 immersion program. And I guess this person would work with teachers, principals, and parents to create a district-wide program that is cohesive and that would ensure that the immersion program remains aligned to our best practices, and that person would also collect the data and report to inform the programmatic decisions. That's one of the other reasons why I feel that having Rosa Molina is really going to help us do that. And that's one of the reasons why we created this group to begin with, to make sure that we have a program that is actually begins at K and ends at 12 and is all together. Is that it?
So within the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've had 2 meetings with the immersion parents of the current 5th graders going into 6th grade next year at Cunha, and to share the results of the study group and share our findings and recommendations. The members that came to it were very receptive to the suggestions and did respond favorably to the expansion of the Spanish content instruction through 8th grade. And that is the end of our report. If you have any other questions.
I just have one final question, and I
Sure.
bet Joyce can answer this. How old is the program? 20 years?
23.
Is it 20 years, 21 years?
Something that's probably 23. My daughter is 27, and she was in my kindergarten class when she was 5.
Okay, and she was the first year, wasn't
Yes.
she?
21, 22, 22.
Yes.
So 22 years? I tried to figure it out, I couldn't. 22 years.
That's right.
I have another question. I don't know. if
You
that
look
would-
just as young, Joyce.
You do?
Perhaps for you, Tony. Who,
To laugh it off.
in this report, there's a review of relevant research. I wonder who picked these 5 studies? Was that your responsibility, or was it picked by the group?
We all did some selection and made some suggestions, and there were others that were there that were available to us to look at as well, but these were the ones that were most on point and had the deepest relevance to the work that we were doing. So I don't remember if I attributed a number of studies for the group to consider, but I don't know if it was all 5 of the ones that I had picked.
So were any of these studies critical of the immersion model, or are they all pro? Was there a pro and con balance in the literature review?
Well, the literature was very consistent that the programs were operated with full alignment to best practices, that they were successful.
All literature? You mean, or this literature?
This literature.
Right.
Any literature that we found. We did find literature that found, that if those systems weren't in place, then the results, the majority of those best practices weren't in place, then districts were likely not finding those results. And we found some literature that just had, caution's probably too strong of a word, but just had some, kind of editorial advice that, to ensure that districts go into this thoughtfully for the right reasons, understanding that this is two-way immersion is a bi-literacy model, as opposed to bilingual education, which was very popular, maybe 30 years ago, up to 20 years ago, which it was a model that was designed to use the native language to transition to English as a basis of that, without a intention of bilingualism, full bilingualism. So just to make sure that the culture and community supported that goal and understood what that commitment meant.
So the reason why I ask is that sometimes if you look at what people with a different viewpoint take, you can learn, perhaps uncover errors in the way the program has been done. And something like that. It's often very helpful in analysis to look at the other side of the coin.
Yeah, so we were very focused on extracting not only programs that were exemplary, but what made them exemplary. What are those components that are in place to make sure that we're attending?
I like the word fidelity.
So no failure analysis. Because I'm sure some of them have been, right?
Some of them have.
Okay.
I had a question about kind of what happens next. It seems like there was the main theme of the immersion program, and I'm wondering if this group is going to stay together as a group over the next year to explore some of those other options. Then there was also kind of the sub-theme that seemed to come up, which was English language acquisition in general throughout the district and the coordination between all the programs. And so I was curious how those both are going to move forward.
Well, this particular group was formed for the purpose of studying the immersion program. The issues are surrounding English language learners and their acquisition of English is a little bit off topic for this, and it's a broader discussion that we need to have not only with staff, but with our community as well. And, we're certainly engaging with our District English Learner Advisory Committee in those conversations and getting their recommendations in the LCAP process. I think that there is a place for this group to continue its dialogue and discussion next year. especially if there is an interest in looking more closely at the high school and what is beyond CUNY, and we may not be ready for that discussion until a couple of years. But certainly that's an area for further exploration. I think that if the governing board is supportive of moving forward with studying the possibility of establishing an immersion-only school, then there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. And this core group, so I can't speak that everyone will want to come back for another year, but using this core group would be a logical and the direction that I would want to take in terms of, at least having someone to, there's going to be a lot of work that has to be done behind the scenes and brought to it, but someone to vet it and take a look at it and study it.
So you think that the English language acquisition is mostly going to be addressed through the LCAP and the new process, that will be the place to kind of coalesce those best practices? Because it seems like we've had reports on different things over the years, but I haven't, in a couple of years that I've been here, really seen a look at, okay, how are our English language learners acquiring their English, and is it working or isn't it, and what can we do different in terms of, if you guys have examples or of best practices?
That's another study.
Okay. It just seems like that needs to be a next step, and maybe not for this group, but for some group, whether it's through LCAP or in some other way.
LCAP will articulate the need, but it won't solve the issue. Only we know.
And are we looking for direction tonight, or will this come back to the board for discussion in a month or two in terms of direction for next year, in terms of where the immersion study group might go to?
We're looking for direction from the board tonight in terms of what you would like us to do with this. Is the board interested in taking formal action on the recommendations or a subset of recommendations? Should this come back as a potential study session for additional conversation? The one area that has resonated well with our community, and if we're going to implement next year, we need to at least have a show of support from the board as soon as possible is the CUNY program, because we have a lot of work to do in terms of identifying, locating, and purchasing the resources for those programs. The curriculum is accompanied both, the English language curriculum has Spanish language accompaniments, and we need to make sure we identify all those components and start working with those.
Were we thinking of doing it just at 6th grade or all 3 grades?
Just at 6th grade for
initially.
Next year.
Okay, that's what I
growing
heard.
that each year.
Okay, adding in one. Okay, so the current 5th graders would be those students that would have the additional Spanish language curriculum.
And part of that's because we have a staff available to do the 6th grade.
At 6th grade, yes, I heard that. Yeah.
And so what it would look like next year is no zero period. And for those students coming into the 5th grade, they would have an English language arts reading core 2-hour block would become an English language arts and then a Spanish language arts, where the focus in literacy would be in Spanish, so like a Spanish reading.
And language arts is 2 periods at CUNY,
Correct.
isn't it? So
And
it
that
would
could
really
be
be
fluid.
3 classes of Spanish language.
No, it would really only be 2, because English language
3
arts.
periods, I'm saying.
There would be 3 periods of those kids in the same
Right.
cohort together.
Okay.
But only 2 periods would be primarily taught in Spanish. And so it would be that Spanish literacy, and then a content subject, history, social science, for next year. But it could be a different content area depending on credentialing. There are current credentialing, history, social science for 6th grade. It makes the most sense.
And another thought is you're looking for some sort of direction and whether or not to keep this group together, but knowing that Hatch is one of our first schools to be remodeled, if we indeed are going to keep 2 programs side by side on that campus, now would be the time to make some decisions before that remodeling starts. So what does that remodeling look like? And maybe we need to look at plans through a different lens than what we've been looking at in the past. But it seems as though it's the perfect storm at this point in time, if that's the direction that
If
we're
that's the
headed.
direction that the governing board wants to look at, that has to be done very, very soon, because those design plans are already in process.
Exactly.
And the school is being envisioned, under the modernization and new construction, not to be any larger than it is. We're retiring equal number of classrooms that we're building.
Right.
And so essentially it's being built at that level. Then we need to take a look at what is the best size for elementary school. Do we want 750, 800 student elementary schools, or one elementary school? And is that the best, elementary community for kids to be educated?
I don't know if, as a
I'd say no.
board member, I'm ready to give any
Right.
decisions tonight.
I'm just
So,
throwing out those
Yeah.
things we have to consider.
In light of, the extensive and thorough work, so thank you to
Yes.
Yeah.
all of the
Oh,
community members and staff and teachers who gave their all in this and made it research-based and were thoughtful in reaching out to the community and making it as inclusive process as possible. The one thing I'm walking away definitively for language retention and owning that language, you got to do it through 8th grade. That seems pretty, not much to discuss in that vein. So in terms of, I'm thinking this in more of a straw man or straw person from the board, is give guidance to proceed with the 6th grade installation of what we just discussed, and then further exploration of additional recommendations, and this obviously needs to be an ongoing dialogue. Some of the items I certainly agreed with, others I did not, and I think just more analysis needs to be done, and certainly hope we can gather a committee to continue this, to sort it out, because I think it's critical. This is obviously a popular program, but it's, I think, pretty silly to not have an integrated program, and so thank goodness we're moving in that direction, but that's really critical, and I think the same eye would need to be placed on STEM or environmental studies or whatever else we did as we develop those strategies. That is contiguous. So I guess I'd ask the board members, does anybody have a resistance or difficulty with providing guidance to staff to proceed with the 6th grade installation of the program as we've discussed it here for next year as a first step?
well, it appears there's a staff member stepping forward. Lalo's been talking about it. This committee has done, it seems like that would be a good baby's first step.
So are you looking, though, to place this on a future board agenda for a more formal adoption of that
I think that would be
recommendation?
wise.
Or are we right now kind of giving direction and we won't come back to any kind of formal adoption? I'm just looking
I think
clear
at
on
some
the
point
process.
we need to have a formal adoption of recommendations.
So I would be in favor of sooner rather than later adopting some of these more easy and basic recommendations and then including that and, tagging and making research easier on some of the other ones, and then maybe certain of them could be set aside for further study of the immersion study group, and others will be, other parts of the district will be looking at in terms of other magnet programs and other kinds of things. So maybe we can have a special study session, I think, at some point, maybe in June, early June or something, where we could look at some of these larger issues in a little bit more detail. That would be nice.
I like the idea of looking at the elementaries altogether, that Fairlawn View and El Granada populations are equally valid and important, and we need to address that as well.
Absolutely. And I'll add one last thing that you
Please
jumped out
do.
at me, if I may.
Yes.
If I may. That indicator you talked about that now we have in place, I think that's moving forward going to be a powerful tool for us. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Measure kids across years.
Yeah, I have that ability now, that simple tool. Tracking and do that.
Why can't we go backwards though?
Well, we are going backwards, but it isn't just this. We are going back, but it's a paper.
Well, maybe not 21 years, but
No, no.
I mean, we've only
But
looked at
within
the
our
last
system.
four,
Within our system.
well, the last 3, I guess.
Yeah, no, we're going back within our system and retagging kids who we know have been in immersion, but that didn't exist when we were extracting this data.
also be good to hear what those high school graduates are doing with their Spanish. Are they majoring in college in Spanish? Are they traveling abroad and becoming tour guides in Spanish? I mean, wouldn't it be lovely to have some kind of, just where are they now?
Alumni survey.
So do we want to agendize for the next meeting the issue of the 6th grade and then do a special study session in June? Is that what you're thinking, Fran?
It's just a recommendation.
That's why I'm offering that to the group.
And maybe,
Say that again for
well, I
next
think we'd
issue.
agendize some of the other recommendations as well. I think
Okay.
the tagging and some of the other things that are
Okay.
also easy and make, you know, and then some of the ones that are larger issues, we could have a special study session on, or reform the task force to look at some of the larger issues. And maybe the special study session could decide what the task force would want to be working on for the following year.
So is the next iteration a discussion with possible action for the?
For
low-hanging
some of the
fruit, if you will?
recommendations,
Right.
a subset, maybe
Yep.
not all of them.
So I'll work with Tony on the agenda for the next meeting and we'll sort through that.
Because there'll be
Fair.
some cost items. Isn't Rosa Molina a cost for coming in? That's, we gotta address the money issue.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody for
Thank
your,
you.
Nice
for your
job,
work
guys.
and time. Appreciate it. All right. I'm guessing we may bump up against our curfew tonight, folks, but
How efficient can you be?
I'll be as efficient as possible. We're going to move on to number 12, communications. Board members.
It feels like it's been a busy but productive month. We had I thought, a good meeting with the strategic plan subcommittee where we talked about the 2 themes that we had chosen in our special study session. So excited about communication and professionalism and working on both of those. Also introduced the LCAP plan with that, and I think that's really exciting, the outreach, and I'm sure Tony will be speaking about that, the outreach that he's doing. Kate and I hosted our PTO president breakfast, which has been really wonderful to educate folks about what we're working on in the board, but we're also envisioning it as, and people are already using it as a way for them to communicate themselves together about issues that affect all the different school sites. So we'll continue to do that, and that's really fun.
And we had every site represented at our last coffee. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
Pilarcitos was not represented, Raj. We need to get somebody.
Yeah, we need a parent rep.
We need a parent rep.
Pilarcitos. We do like a PTO coffee where we let parent reps know about. Do you have a parent group?
No,
Okay.
not currently. We definitely.
When you form one, then give us the rest so we can talk about it.
It's one of our goals. Can there be a rep even if we don't have a parent?
Yeah,
group?
definitely. A
We'd
parent
love
who-
to have, it's communication, it's
Okay.
inclusiveness of, just a site talking to site. Yeah.
We've had 2 this year?
3.
We've had 3 this year, just kind of informal coffees with them, where we talk about board issues and what's going on with the district and upcoming things, so.
That sounds great. Fred, I'll send you an email.
Yeah, both of us.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think that's all. My daughter got to be principal of the day yesterday,
Oh, yeah?
so that was kind of fun. She got to interview Tony, and I said, oh, you get to meet the superintendent. He's the head of all the school, and then she said, who runs him? And I said, I guess the board does. And I was talking to someone else, and she said, but who runs you? And I said, everybody runs us. That was kind of a nice reminder of our democracy at work.
Gentlemen?
I just have one little thing. I got up to that baseball stadium, that baseball field we have up there for the first time, and I've been watching some baseball games, and I can't imagine it. I'd rather go there than AT&T, and I love AT&T. That is one of the most spectacular places to watch a baseball game. So I brought up my peanuts, and I was cracking my peanuts, first row, and I got yelled at by a guy. He said, don't drop the peanuts, I gotta clean those up. And you know what, I was like, oh. But I gladly did it because it was the most polished, beautiful place to play baseball. How fortunate we are.
People come from miles around to play in that field.
I'm ready.
I'm
Field of
amazed.
dreams.
I hear from people that live in the East Bay say, "Oh, you live in Half Moon Bay? Wow, we were over playing baseball. It's amazing." This last month, so the most notable just a few days ago was the Measure B kickoff. Somebody's going to talk about that anyway. That was a wonderful thing. Let's hope we can sustain some momentum and sustain our parcel tax. The only other big event that I was involved in was the Education Foundation had a retreat over 2 days And that included their new executive director, who was a man by the name of Keith Cernak, who I don't believe was here today. But so the CEF is in the process of reviewing their mission and their goals, and doing some deep thinking about what they want to do differently and what they want to do better to help bring excellent opportunities to all the kids in the district, and I hope that it's appreciated that they've been attempting to do that and contributing a large amount of money towards that direction. It hasn't always worked out as beautifully as they liked, and there's never enough money to go around for all the great ideas, but they're moving forward on it. That's it for me.
Great. Just a couple for me. I had the opportunity to attend the Fairlawn View auction, which was a fantastic event, and it's always great to see all the parents and community members out there opening up their wallets to contribute to a lot of the fantastic programs that are there. So great event. And then I was at the campaign kickoff, as Dr. Reamer mentioned, and I just want to encourage people to communicate to your friends and neighbors and coworkers about the criticality of passing Measure B, and get involved an hour here or hour there on a phone bank or walking a neighborhood is critical. There's a lot of work to be done, and we all need each other to deliver those $1.7 million to the budget. It's critical as we move forward. Can't underemphasize that. So that's it for me. Brenda, students, what's going on out there at the schools?
I believe we're starting with a video from the Cunha Cub News, the CCN.
Lovely. I will move again. All right.
Listen to that first.
I'll get the lights.
For those of you who are still here, this is certainly worth the price of admission.
No peanuts?
Michael and peanuts.
Welcome to the 4th episode of CCN. I'm Sophia. And I'm Jared. Man, aren't you excited for the student versus staff basketball game? Let's see what's been happening lately. We'll be covering Chuck the Balloon, the Leprechaun Run, student versus staff volleyball game, 6th grade basketball, and the Double Trouble Oreo Challenge. Let's take a look at Chuck the Balloon. They sure know how to catch those balloons. Here's Leprechaun Run. student versus staff volleyball game, where the students bump, set, and spike their way to a victory. Congratulations to the 8th grade A volleyball team for beating the staff in the student versus staff volleyball game. Here are some clips from the 6th grade basketball. Keep it up, 6th graders. There's been a lot of trouble around here lately. I think it's because of that double trouble Oreo challenge. Did you hear about Mr. Lyons' class competing in a Bay Area basketball tournament? They went undefeated. They are now Northern California's basketball champions. Future events here at CUNY are the student versus staff basketball game, which are happening this Thursday at 3:30, where there will be half-court shots for $100 and raffles. Also, this Friday is Tie Day.
Oh yeah, and don't forget that the spring dance is on April 11th, and it starts at 7 because it's spring. Get ready to groove on with your friends.
And I heard the movie's Frozen. That's it for today's episode of CCN. Stay classy, Cubs.
Outstanding.
Okay, so now I'll present from Fairlawn View. They had talent shows coming up, so every Thursday they've been having rehearsals. They're putting together all sorts of acts, including skits, songs, jokes, routines, and dances. The students had a chance to hang up to Rancho Corral de Tierra, Coming up is the SBAC, which is replacing the STAR. They think it's more challenging, but they think they'll do good. Half Moon Bay High School. I'll start off with the ASB elections. Fortunately, I didn't win ASB president, so next year's ASB president is Nicholas Pyle. Vice president is Emily Jacoby. Next year's student board member is going to be Irma Ramos. Currently, there's no treasurer or secretary, so that is our ASB. Avid students and tutors took a tour of UC Santa Cruz last Thursday. 10th and 11th graders got to take a tour of USF the week before that. Puente Spring Festival was April 4th, and that was open to all community members. We had the Alas group perform folkloric dancing and mariachi. 10th and 11th graders, 11th graders are doing SBAC, which was last week and this week. After spring break, we get to do CSTs, and then after that, we have AP testing. The spring blacklight dance is this Thursday, so we're hoping for a good outcome, good turnout of people, because usually we don't have some, so we're hoping a lot of people show up to this one. GSA had their day of silence last Friday. Students took a vow to be silent for the school day. I participated. I failed by lunch. I could not do it. But there was a lot of students who participated, so it was really good. Miss Nielsen is a finalist in the All-Star Teacher Competition. We're trying to vote as much as we can, once per day. So 20,000 can be won for the school, so that's exciting. Class of the year is being planned. The current standings are seniors are in first place, followed by the freshmen, then the juniors, and last, the sophomores. Spring Musical was a complete success. They were sold out for 2 of their nights. And then leadership is getting ready for the staff week in May. So we're doing something every day for the staff, planning something fun for them. And we're all excited for spring break.
Absolutely.
So that's all I just
Great, thank you. Tony?
Yes, I have 2 items to report on. The first is the LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan stakeholder meetings are underway, and we've held most of those. On March 17th, our first one was held with the District English Learner Advisory Committee, and then we met again with them, Dr. Shuck and I, on April 7th to receive their formal written comments. They had 10 areas that were most important to them, and then a secondary list of about an additional 15 items that they want to see addressed. On April 2nd, we met with principals with the purpose to ensure that all of the former EIA funds, the services that those provided, were included in the supplemental services section of the LCAP. On April 9th, we met with the Strategic Plan Steering Committee, who is an ideal group to meet with because it's a broad stakeholder group representing both staff and parent and community groups across the community. And then April 14th, just yesterday, we met with an open meeting with CUTA professionals. About 45 teachers were on hand for that give and take process of informing and sharing the process and the document. And then tomorrow, we're meeting with site council, site-based parent group reps, and principals to receive their formal feedback as well. And then we have an additional session to schedule that will be with CSEA and CUTA leadership. As the governing board understands that I will be responding to all questions and comments received from these groups. They'll be posted in writing, and of course copies will be provided to the groups and to the governing board. Our next steps are that on May 8th, the governing board will receive a draft of the LCAP at its current form. We'll conduct a public hearing on May 29th for the LCAP, and feedback and comments and questions provided by the public during that public hearing will also need to be responded to in writing. And then on June 26th, we'll ask the board to formally adopt our first local control accountability plan in conjunction with adopting our budget for 2014-15 school year. The second item is to report that, as Brenda just alluded to, the Smarter Balanced Assessments field tests are now underway, and we started last week, and it was really a very good start. I was up at the high school for the first day of testing, as were many other people here at staff, and I just wanted to see the engine turn over, and it did. Students were able to successfully log on to the system, and they were able to quickly move to their assigned tests, and once that happened, you know, I left with, and then Dr. Shuck came to the high school and stayed a little bit longer and got to actually see the interaction with the actual assessment. So, you know, we've had, most of the schools now have had at least started, and we'll be concluding that in the weeks following. Again, this is a field test. It's a test of the test. We will not be receiving any student scores in aggregate or individual, but we are learning a great deal, and I have to you know, acknowledge and thank and make sure that you know, our principals and their teams back at the school, because each of them have a partner, their testing coordinators, and the great work that they've done in rolling this out. Obviously, Dr. Shuck and her leadership in getting us to this point, and of course, I don't know if Ann's still here, but Ann Bailey, who has been at the center of all of this, and getting all the devices up and running, working properly, loaded with the appropriate web browsers for across the devices, from Android tablets to Chromebooks to PCs, and making sure that they're all up and running and available. And like I said before, we turned the key, the engine turned over, and we were on board. So
That's
it was
great news.
It was amazing. That's all.
That's all. Great. Okay. Before we get to the consent items, we have an item to add under the action items, 14F, to approve a field trip for CUNY Intermediate School surf team to go to a field trip to Oceanside. Do I need a motion to add that? Or, yep. So look for a motion. Look for a motion to edit the agenda.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we now have a 14F. But before we get to that, we have consent items, number 13. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
A motion to accept.
Yes. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Plus one. All in favor? Plus one. Great. Okay, so now we're on to action items. Number 14A, adopt resolution number 7-14, recognition of certificated and classified employee weeks.
Thank you, President Papalardo. Presented to the governing board this evening is a joint resolution to recognize both certificated and classified employees within our school district. While many districts take the opportunity to recognize employee groups in a separate capacity, we like to continue the tradition of recognizing employee groups together within the same resolution. The contributions of both certificated and classified staff are equally important, and we would like to take the opportunity to present this resolution to the governing board for approval this evening. I think, as Brenda mentioned, there's going to be a variety of different activities taking place. Fun activities, I think, was the operative word, plus probably some special treats that are provided by the local PTAs and support parent groups, as well as students throughout our district during the week of May 5th through May 9th. And presented to the governing board this evening is a resolution in their recognition, and I present it to the governing board for approval this evening.
Great. Do we have a motion to approve 14A?
I so move.
A second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Roll call?
That is a roll call item. Thank you right there. Do you have roll call for?
Aye.
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 All right. Next, we have 14B, adopt resolution 8-14, approve authorized representatives of Cabrillo Unified School District as signatories, effective April 15th, 2014.
Yes, thank you. This is a housekeeping item. We have to do a couple times throughout the year. I asked that the board adopt resolution 814, which would approve the listed authorized representatives of Cabrillo Unified District as signatories effective April 15th.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve 14B?
So moved.
Okay. And what is the roll call?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, so approved. All right, action item 14C, adopt fiscal year-end resolution 9-14, approve budgetary increases and transfers at year-end. I bet you're on again.
14C comes a little earlier this year. Most of these end-of-the-year resolutions are typically brought to you in May, but since May is such a busy time for us, I thought we could get some of this house cleaning done a little bit earlier. The background of this resolution releases us from calling a special board meeting during the year-end posting of warrants and liabilities for overages that are adjusted throughout the year that affect the budget. It's a standard process, but is required to be authorized by the board per resolution for the fiscal office to make those transactions.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to approve 14C? Second?
I'll second.
All right. Roll call?
Aye.
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 All right, so approved. All right, one more resolution, 14D, adopt fiscal year in resolution 1014, approve appropriating ending balance to a reserve. That just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is definitely something we look forward to doing when we have the opportunity. Resolution 1014 allows us to appropriate any ending fund balance to a reserve, mitigating the effect that we would have to increase the gain limitation and in result give money back to the state if it is unaccounted for and and we don't we don't allocate it to the reserve fund.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve 14D as presented?
A motion to approve 14.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Kate is a second. Roll call?
Aye.
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 All right.
Don't want to give anything back, Chris.
14.
Don't give anything back.
Not one penny.
All right, we'll move on to 14E, approval of a contract with DT Architecture, Inc. to design a dual gymnasium at Cunha Intermediate School. This is very exciting.
Yeah, this is
We'll
a very
be talking about this.
Yeah, this is a very exciting project. It's taken a little time to come to finalizing the agreement. We have in the audience this evening Richard Taronas and Stuart Grunau, who are with DT and are here to answer any questions that the governing board may have on the project. But this action will formalize the design contract for the dual gymnasium, which, as the governing board is well aware, is a joint partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of the Coast Side, and a tremendous opportunity to expand recreational facilities here on the coast side, and to support what will become an even more thriving program for our students, meaning the Boys and Girls Club, as they have secured since we've entered into this informal agreement, the opportunity to take over the center across the street and build their clubhouse. And the gymnasium, which will be right across the street, will be an integral part of services provided for the Boys and Girls Club, as well as provide a really state-of-the-art, tremendous baseball field equivalent, gymnasium for varsity basketball will be the home. Yep, it will be world-class. And this partnership is very advantageous because it allows the district to leverage a relatively small amount of bond funds relative to the size of the project to provide this district resource. Gentlemen are here if the board has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I first of all would like to thank you for sitting through all of our You are the last.
They were.
Thank you for your patience.
I have a question. This is the final plan? I mean, this is a revision from the previous plan, correct? So this is just a contract.
You're talking about
Exactly.
Yeah, this is just a contract.
I
Remember? Yeah.
A plan that came with the package.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure which one was attached, but it's still going through schematics.
Okay.
This is just a contract.
So it had some blue lines on it or something.
Right.
And so we'll get to that later.
Sure.
I have a question, and of course we can all appreciate what a gym is, but could you speak to the vision and the core tenets as you're envisioning this project that would help us understand how you're approaching it and we're taking into account?
Well, what's sort of been thrown around as we've gone through the conceptual design is, I'm sorry, Richard Taronis, Darling Taronis Architecture.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yep.
What the statement that's sort of been thrown around is first cabin, world class. The way that we look at this is that it is a community facility. It obviously needs to serve the Cunha campus, but from our understanding and what we've talked through, it's going to serve the greater Cabrillo community. And from that perspective, we're looking at it as, each detail is going to be, looked at obviously with the appropriate economic considerations.
Sure.
But doing everything that we can, like I say, to make it a top-notch facility. I personally have coached basketball with my son for years. He's played varsity basketball. He's now a graduating senior. So I've been in gymnasiums up and down the peninsula in Northern California. And everything that we've started talking about is pretty top-notch. I don't think that there's anywhere where we're looking to skimp or cut corners. Obviously, we do have a budget. We do have a given footprint that we got to respect, and a given campus that we have to adhere to and be respectful of. But our vision is to, like I say, to create a facility that serves the community, serves all of the programs for both the partnering groups of the Boys and Girls Club as well as the district. I know that's a lot of verbosity, but that's the way we're excited about the program. That's the way we're looking at it. We're excited about the project and being able to partner with the district and establish a good relationship.
Thank you.
This is going to be a dual gymnasium. You've
Correct.
had experience with the big and the small kinds of...
Correct, yeah. We've worked on high school campuses, for example, for years, working with both what used to be called boys gym and girls gym, but now our main gym and auxiliary gym.
The boys would have the auxiliary, right?
Correct.
You got it.
Yeah, but we're looking at both facilities to house high school level standard court sizes for both basketball, volleyball, and the other activities that are being presented. And then look also at the advantages by having the dual houses to not only serve the district and the Boys and Girls Club, but also to serve for tournament activities, et cetera, at the high school level for when they do need the larger facility or the extended facilities. So yeah, we're very versed in looking at how those things can serve and be housed at the same time. Because some of the other issues that we'll get into in terms of the details are security and lockability and, whose spaces are whose. So we are working closely with both groups, both the district and the Boys and Girls Club group, to get that feedback and get that input as we move through the design.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Again, whenever we're fortunate enough to have a client consider a contract like this, I just like to be here to put a face to the name
We appreciate that.
This is the only face
It's
I've
important.
got, so. I should have put Stuart up here. Thank you. Yeah, it's a face. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion for the approval of the contract for the gym?
I second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And one? We're on the good. Okay. Mr. Rayner, Mr. Alfano, you're on. 14F, approved field trip for Cunha Intermediate School surf team to Oceanside, California.
Hi, how are you?
I know most of you, I think.
We're well.
Yeah, good, good. As you know, the Half Moon Bay Surf Club has been around for about 7 years now. And I do want to mention a couple of things. These are my favorite subjects. The middle school has a grade point average of 3.4 this year. And the high school surf club has an average of 3.5. When we started all this, we were around 3.6, 3.7, but our kids are now into other sports too, and so it affects their grades. And also, one of them was in the play. That took up a lot of his time also.
So you're insinuating that surfers are smarter?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we're clear. All right.
Also, I do want to make one more point, is that the Boys and Girls Club took the same effort as the surf club. And when we started following the grades, the Boys and Girls Club grade point average was 2.1. Tonight, Judith was here, and she said that the grade point average for the Boys and Girls Club now is up to 2.8. So hopefully, our goal was to be at 3.0. That's in 4 years. We went from 2.1 to 2.8, so I think we'll be at 3.0 shortly. I want to introduce you first to Rusty Gibbs. He's taken over as the coach for the middle school, and he's the one who will be handling the trip, and our kids are very excited about going. The high school was just down for their state championships, and unfortunately they didn't do very well. But individually they did very well. We had one come in 8th place overall in the state of California, and we had a girl that came in third place in the state of California. All right. So Rusty?
Hi all, thank you for seeing us on such short notice. We do have the middle school state championships. It will take place in Oceanside, California. It's May 3rd and 4th. Our team is very excited. I have a few sheets here. I didn't make enough.
We'll share. We're friendly.
That just kind of gives you a little bit of info. We're all going to be staying at the same hotel. The hotel is the closest hotel to the actual contest site. We will have a teacher representative, Shauna McCartney, there. She will be with us the whole time. The students will be driven down by their parents, so this is a full family thing. The hotel itself is somewhere that Mr. Rayner has been at before. We were down there last year. It's a great facility. It has a large swimming pool. It has 3 barbecues outside. So we're going to have kind of like a family team thing. So we'll be cooking all together. We'll be sleeping all under the same roof. So it's going to be a really good, exciting thing for the children. One of our 8th graders last year, who's now a freshman, she got 5th overall in women's longboarding. So we are very, very competitive, even though we're a small community up here on the coast side, but we do really well in state. So we're just asking for not only your blessing, but your permission as well to go ahead and represent Half Moon Bay down at the state level in Oceanside.
Sounds like a wonderful event and trip, including the families as well. That's great.
One thing I did not mention is the Scholastic Surf Series, which is mentioned there. They have a website. They ask us to do a student membership emergency information form, which all of our students have completed, as well as a waiver, student waiver. So all of these have been completed. I have a copy here, just to let you guys know that we have done our paperwork. We've done everything. Mr. Williams is here to represent us as well. So we just thank you for the time to meet with you and ask for your permission.
Travels by car?
Yes. And the parents will be driving their own children.
Wish you a safe journey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I need a motion to approve 14F.
Motion to approve.
Second?
A second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
And one.
Thank you very
Have
much.
a wonderful trip.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for hanging in there.
So what do you say to surfers? Break a leg?
Don't drown.
Don't drown.
No
No
sharks.
sharks.
It's the no
Have
shark
fun.
symbol.
Have fun.
Have fun. There you go. How about
Somebody asked about immersion students and what they're doing. I happened to, because my kids went through the immersion program, but I know 3 students. One just would travel all over the world, and he is graduating from Oregon. He's an Oregon Duck in biological engineering.
Who is that? Do you know the name?
Rourke.
Oh, Rourke.
Yeah,
okay.
one of the
Okay,
Rourke boys,
okay.
one of the kids, and I'm sorry, I know you're gonna ask me her name, and I don't know, but she's in Oslo, and she is also in science, getting a master's degree, and another one works in Nigeria in the U.S. Embassy. They all graduated from the immersion, and they all speak multiple languages. I know.
Wow.
That's some great
I
insight.
will give you a little update on at least 3 of them anyway, and I know.
Thanks, Roger. We appreciate it. Thanks for the
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go home, Mike.
Okay. Might give another meeting tonight as well, right?
He's gonna go do some neighborhood walks.
See you guys. All right, that's all our action items. Discussion items, none. We may get under the wire here. I'm aware of that, yes, indeed. Let's see, so future board agenda items, approved school site plans, first reading of book adoption for Affluent Bay High School, budgets, recognition of our very important retirees, and we'll have some policies we'll be talking about. Number 17, future events, spring break, everybody's excited about that, students and teachers. COSIDE Ready School Team Meeting, can't say I know what that is. We have some open houses, ELAC, honoring classified and certificated employees week, which we chatted a little bit out earlier. And we have another board meeting May 8th. And I believe next month we have 2, am I remembering correctly, 2 board meetings? Lovely. So before we return to closed session, we need a motion to extend beyond the, do we need that for the closed session? The curfew, does that matter?
Before we do that, would it be all right during a teacher classified and certificated appreciation week if we did a little treat or snack? We did it last year, and I was happy to be the donut runner. Would you?
yeah.
I'd like to help you actually. Okay. Okay. Would you be willing to support that financially?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. I'll let
It
you
wasn't,
know.
it
I'll let
wasn't
you know
unanimous,
what I
wait a
owe.
minute, wait a minute.
What?
Was it unanimous?
Yes. I believe so.
Donuts?
Whatever, I mean, I don't know.
You don't
about
get
donuts,
any.
but
No, I know.
Some sort
But
of,
I'm
Just get
supporting
shaken
someone
down.
else getting it, what goes around.
something from us to classified and certificated.
I-
Yes.
It's most
Back it all
appreciated
I think-
last year,
I
I
think that's
believe.
awesome.
So, is that all right with you? All right, thank you.
Is that approved by the current board?
So we don't, no, we don't need a motion. Okay. Well, before we return to closed session, I want to thank everybody for a very vigorous meeting, lots of dialogue, very engaged, top-notch work, so thank you, all you guys.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All righty, we're going to closed session.